I bet you have this dream life that has been on your heart for a long time. I bet you work a full-time job, or maybe you have kids, or you're a full-time student. And then you probably care about your health. You want to get 8 hours of sleep, you want to eat well, you want to exercise, you want to maintain your community and your social connections, you want to care for your well-being, you want to do all the things you love. And no matter how many lists or schedules or plans you have, your time just slips away from you. You've no more energy, you're burnt out, and you're wondering, how do people actually create their dream life? How are people with the same amount of time that I have in a day, with the same amount of responsibilities, with the same amount of goals, how are they able to achieve this? What if I told you that making time for everything is a lot easier than you think? You don't have to give up your life in order to build your dream life, that you can build it seamlessly. Because there's one misconception: the more time you have, it doesn't mean that you're going to do more. Productivity equals time plus energy, because energy is a factor that is highly correlated with time. Energy directly affects how we show up for ourselves, because the key ingredient to having more time for things is being intentional. Hi, I'm Lily. I'm a creative entrepreneur. I'm a freelance developmental book editor. I'm working towards publishing my debut novel. My entire mission is to not only empower myself by building a creative lifestyle that supports my dream life, but also inspire and empower you to feel so confident in your ability to achieve whatever you envision. And my goal is to show to you that you are 100% qualified for your dream life, that your potential is infinite. I truly believe that we can have it all, and it comes down to working smarter, not harder. So how do I have the time to build a freelance editing business, to revise 2 books towards publication, to post on TikTok and YouTube and build a creative community online, to work out 5 times a week, to meal prep twice a week, to maintain a relationship, to maintain friends, to work full time? I'm going to share with you 6 steps that will help you make time for everything that have actually worked for me and has transformed my mindset moving forward. I started going by these 6 steps in the beginning of 2026, and already in mid-February, I've noticed a drastic improvement in my productivity and my intention and my progress towards my goals and my overall well-being and my overall happiness. And I can feel my dream life closer to me than ever, and I've never been busier. So here is exactly how I do that within these 6 steps. Cut your time liabilities. Start to think of time as assets and liabilities. When it comes to finances, when you have an asset, it has a return value. So when thinking about putting time into something, consider what is the return on investment for putting time into this one thing. Because prioritizing certain things in your time schedule are going to return on your investment by saving you more time later on. Think about all those small things that are stealing your time that you're not fully aware of. Cooking, or doing laundry, or choosing your outfit, or scrolling on social media, or texting friends. If you are able to condense these times into smaller blocks, it is going to invest. You might think that you don't have time to cook healthy meals because that just takes so much time. But in reality, prioritizing 2 to 3 hours a week cooking and meal prepping is going to save you so much more time throughout your week when you are hungry, when you are thinking about what you want to eat, when you have less energy because you don't really have the energy to focus on things. So by prioritizing meal prepping, not only are you saving yourself time from actually having to cook food later on, but you are also giving yourself energy and focus and productivity later on in the week, because when you are fully fed, when you're eating nutritiously, when you don't have to make decisions about your food, you have more mental space and clarity and energy in order to move forward with the actual deep work that you need to do to move your life forward. So this is all about taking those small admin type tasks throughout your day and grouping them together and batching them. Same thing with content. I started batching my content. I started prioritizing time to actually plan my content, time to film my content, and time to edit my content. And by doing that, I've been able to streamline the process and be way more efficient, where the return on investment for my time for planning a YouTube video, planning a TikTok video, then filming it and then editing it is saving so much more time. Because then on top of that, when I actually have better content, it's going to push forward my businesses and my reach and my marketing. So thinking about these things that are going to compound over time. Also, another big thing is sleep. I used to think that I didn't have enough time for sleep, that, who has time for sleep, right? You have to just cut your hours of sleep to have more time in the day. But sleep is extremely optimal for your energy, for your focus, for your mood, for your ability to not be distracted. I'm not a scientist, but I have heard research, and I really like, researching these things, is that When you are sleep deprived, you're more likely to be distracted. You're more likely to go for that cheap dopamine. You're more likely to be, off track. And it's so much harder to be focused on the things that you really care about. Stealing that extra hour of sleep, is that actually helping you? Is that becoming more of a liability for your time later? Sleeping 7 to 8 hours a day is an asset where you're able to use that so that it's going to be a better return on investment for the time and energy that you have later. Think about things that are time liabilities. Scrolling on your phone is a big one. This is something that steals your energy. Not only does it steal your energy, but it steals your focus. So when you are scrolling on your phone, it might just be 5 minutes of scrolling, and you might think that, oh, that's just 5 minutes, but that's a time liability because that is taking your energy, it is taking your motivation, your momentum, your focus. So when you're thinking about time as less of like a legitimate linear time by time block and more of, is this going to have a good return on investment for my time, or is this going to take my time away from me? And by doing that and having that intention in what you're doing, you're able to have so much more power over what is actually stealing your time and what is helping your time. Number 2 is optimize your psychology. Work with your body and not against it. Now, there are certain things that are innate to most people, but there are other things that are going to be more personal to your own energy source. For example, mornings have a spike in cortisol and a spike in energy. So you have this clear-headedness where it's usually better to do like more deep work or, mental tasks and things like that. Now, this could be different for you if you're more of a night owl and you find that your creative energy and your, mental spark just comes later in the day. But I think for the average person, the morning is easier to get those mental tasks out of the way because you're not beat down with all these decisions throughout the day. You also want to think on what type of energy are you using for each task. For example, I have certain tasks that require a lot of deep mental energy. These are my deep work blocks. So this is when I'm working on editing a client's work, working on revising my book, filming a YouTube video like this. I want my brain to be completely in peak condition where I'm able to actually, express myself fully and really expand my thinking and be creative. I'm a person who works out at night, where I use all my mental energy in the beginning of the day and my body is more groggy in the morning. It's really hard for me to get myself moving. But then by the end of the day, I've been moving all day, I've been eating, I've been fueling myself, and then I love a good night workout. And I know that about myself where I'm working with my psychology. I'm not working against it. I don't feel the need to wake up at 6 a.m. and then run straight to the gym because I know that that is gonna take my mental energy that I have, and it's also not going to be best for my body. So it's this thing where when you're thinking about your time, it's not just how much time you can fit into each block. It's more it being very strategic about what you do at work, different points of the day, and working with your psychology and your energy levels. Also take into account things like caffeine, the foods you're eating, your sleep cycle, things like this are all really important to your psychology and how you're able to show up and have the energy for what you love. We all have habits, and if you don't choose them, they choose you. So you have to be intentional in what you're doing every single day and what you're actually putting your energy towards. A habit that I'm really trying to break is needing my phone whenever I'm getting ready for bed. I know this is really bad for my focus, for my sleep, for my, attention, and it takes, a 10-minute task and makes it 30 minutes because, I'm scrolling in between brushing my teeth, or I need the right music or the right podcast or the right YouTube video to, wash my face to. And that's the thing that I'm realizing, that I have this habit of needing that. So if I'm not intentional in breaking that habit and choosing other habits like reading before bed, then that habit is going to choose me. A big thing that I do is habit stacking. I believe this is from Atomic Habits. Habit stacking is really crucial for your brain because you're able to stack certain habits together psychologically. So it almost becomes a subconscious thing. When I go to work, before or after work, that's when I like to do my deep work blocks for my editing or writing because I'm already in the clock in mindset of going to work and being professional and being on and having my brain on. I also like to habit stack my meal prepping and working out. If I meal prep and then I work out, or I work out and then I meal prep, having those two habits together keeps my brain in the same mentality moving forward. Another thing I habit stack is a lot of my small tasks throughout the day. I post on social media. These are usually batched content. I respond to all my text messages. I respond to my emails. I interact on social media. These are all very admin, small, similar tasks that I group together at one time instead of sprinkling them throughout the day, because the less you can change the state of your mind and change tasks like that, the easier it is to actually stay focused. I used to batch reading and writing together, where I would wake up in the morning and read 15 minutes and then write 15 minutes before I did anything else, because your brain is already in that state of reading that it's so easy to transition into writing. Your dopamine and not spiking your dopamine too early in the day. This is a huge psychology thing that has transformed my motivation, my productivity, the time I have for things, the energy I have. When you pick up your phone in the beginning of the day and you you scroll and scroll and scroll. When you doom scroll early in the day, you're frying your dopamine with unearned rewards. It makes it harder to do hard things. When I achieve a task, like when I run, when I eat a healthy meal, when I do a task that is really hard, I get that reward dopamine of earned dopamine. And I know that that earned dopamine is huge momentum moving forward in my productivity and my mindset and my motivation. So if I start my day with earned dopamine, then it is going to set me up for success and make those harder things later in the day so much easier and that much more enjoyable. But if I set up my day with cheap dopamine and unearned dopamine, if I eat a really, sugary sweet in the morning, if I doom scroll in the morning, it's going to make that earned dopamine so much harder. It's going to create so much more resistance to me even wanting to do that because I've already gotten the dopamine. There's no intel, there's no incentive. I try to keep unearned dopamine and cheap dopamine to later in the day. So if I want to have a really sweet treat, I want to watch a TV show that I'm binging, I save that for later in the day when I've already earned my dopamine. Think about the momentum that you carry from the things you do before. When you come home from work, you have that work mentality where it might be easier to then go to the gym right after instead of, sitting on your couch, relaxing and watching a TV show and then going to the gym, because you've lost the momentum from the work. Override those transitions of like relaxation and you build the momentum of doing hard things and then pairing hard things together or pairing, energy tasks together. You're able to actually carry through that energy. But like when I go to the gym, I get this peak of like, endorphins and energy and, dopamine of like, I went to the gym. And when I use that, I can use that straight to then go into meal prepping. But then if I use that and I just scroll on my phone for an hour, that's going to kind of lose that momentum moving forward. This is why I prioritize tasks that enhance my productivity and I schedule my tasks very intentionally throughout the day. Number 3 is list out your prioritized categories. This is where making time for everything really comes into play, where it's not just about your business goals or your dream life goals about like, if you have these big goals of like building a business or moving to a certain city or, having this certain achievement, right? It's not just about that. Some people might disagree with me on this, but in order to achieve those big goals, you have to have all of the foundations working up to that also working. It's kind of think of like the Maslow's triangle, and I always think about this where it's like you have your baseline of like survival of like your food, your water, your shelter, and then you move up to like your community and stuff, and then you move up to self-actualization. A lot of my goals are higher up on the pyramid where I think that a lot of my goals are bigger and visionary and creative and fulfilling. So if I'm not taking care of my basic necessities of my health, my fitness, my sleep, my friends, my family, everything like that, then it's all going to crumble. And that's where I truly believe that burnout comes from, is when we forget the base, we forget the foundation. Everything that you do in the bottom of the pyramid is going to filter up and invest into what you're actually working towards. So thinking about that time as, time as an asset, thinking about sleeping and eating and, investing in your health, investing in your community are all going to build you into a stronger person who is then able to then achieve those goals and to do hard things. Here are some examples of categories that I have for myself that you might resonate with. I have fitness, finance, nutrition, community, self-care, content creation. I have my full-time job, I have hobbies. I have my editing business and my author business, which are more particular for me. Because my dream life is not just one thing. And I think most people are like this too, where you might think that one thing is going to build your dream life. But your dream life is a multitude of all these different factors that come together beautifully. Because if I'm not taking care of myself, how am I supposed to show up for people I care about? And then how am I supposed to give back value to the world through my business and through my writing? When I talk about the asset versus liability when it comes to time management is so important, because you might just think, oh, well, doom scrolling for 10 minutes is only 10 minutes of my day. But you think about the liability of what that does and how it affects all the stuff moving forward. And if you think of, oh, well, 30 more minutes of sleep, that's 30 minutes I could do something else. But that sleep is then going to set you up for such a good mindset moving forward. It's going to set you up for success in the future. Number 4 is creating actionable goals that help you with direction. Create quarterly, monthly, weekly goals, daily goals. These goals satisfy your reward system and keep you motivated. The day-to-day will become mundane. When you lose that spark of inspiration, when you lose that, the big high of like really achieving things and things aren't going as well, having those goals that you can redirect yourself to and actually, analyze and be like, okay, this is what I'm moving towards. This is my why. This is why I'm doing all these things. This is why I'm staying on track. It is going to help you stay motivated, so much more. You want to make these goals obtainable, actionable, and specific. Because I used to have really vague goals in the past where I'd be like, oh, I want to be a full-time author. I want to be a business owner. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be self-employed. I want to help writers. Those are all great, but how can you measure them? Because being able to measure your goals and being able to physically check them off on a list is the most satisfying thing, and it spikes your dopamine in the best reward heavy way. Number 5 is build systems that protect your energy and focus. Think about your quarterly goals, your monthly goals, your weekly goals. For example, one of my quarterly goals for quarter 1 was to book out clients for 2 months in my editing business and create a certain amount of money and income from those 2 months. Now, in order to do that, I have to work backwards and be like, so what do I have a goal for each month and then down to each week? So for week, I can't control exactly how many people book with me, but I can control certain factors that are going to make it a lot more likely. I'm researching marketing on how to market for service-based businesses and how to create sales funnels. I'm researching personal branding and how to brand yourself as a business. I'm researching content creation. I'm, revising the copy on my website and the sales flow. I'm working with clients and I'm making sure that I'm really efficient with responding to emails and communicating with them and building real lasting relationships with these clients. I'm really prioritizing my sacred deep work time where I'm doing the best I can with these editing projects, taking that extra step in order to really build these strong relationships and build really great experiences so I can then have testimonials and build up my social proof as a brand. My weekly goals could be complete this project for this person, revise copy. Then I have systems. So these systems are post 2 to 3 editing based content on my social media, is that the more you can break up your goals into smaller and smaller and smaller tasks and then actually have those actionable tasks into your calendar, it is going to make it so much easier because you're not constantly thinking about the goal. You were just thinking about the tasks that are then going to move you towards that goal. So I'm not always thinking about I need to get more clients. I'm thinking about how can I improve my brand? How can I improve my content? How can I improve my editing experience? Should I take another class? Should I invest in this skill? Should I build my website more? You're thinking more of actionable steps instead of this big goal that you can't always control. Now, the biggest thing and the last final step that is the most important for all of this is keeping your promises to yourself. This is the biggest factor out of all of this because in the past, I have made extreme goals. I've made extreme decisions on moving forward, but I never stayed consistent. And in order to make all of this sustainable and consistent and actually, keeping yourself accountable is allowing yourself to adapt to the spontaneity of life and to the spontaneity of how you show up, but then continuing to stay on track. If you have a day where a fun plan comes up that you want to take account for, you have to sleep a bit longer, you're sick, you want to, run a bit more, something comes up that's unexpected, those things happen. And instead of seeing those as, well, now I'm distracted, so my day is ruined, or I'm just off track, I've already failed. It's about seeing that as I'm taking a detour, and then as soon as I'm able to, I'm just going to go back on and then just continue where I left off. So you're keeping that promise to yourself, but you're not being so unrealistically strict to a point where you don't allow for the real realities of life. I go back and I change my goals. I've done that before, where I see my goals and I'm like, I don't think I'm going to reach this, so I'm going to change my goal a little bit to then redirect my focus to help me feel like that's more attainable. That's not giving up on yourself. And be honest with yourself and check in regularly about what's actually working within your schedule. There's been times where I made a schedule and it just is not feasibly possible for me to do that. And I've had to reevaluate my goals and reevaluate my timelines. Keeping promises to yourself is not about just staying extremely strict to past plans. It is about being aware of what is helping you and always being aligned to your intention of how you're moving forward. Sometimes I have these two voices fighting in my head where one voice is like, oh, just do the easy thing, just be comfortable, just be happy in the moment. And I have this other voice that is, you have these goals, you have these intentions, stick to the plan, stick to what you really desire. And the thing is that the more you listen to that voice, the more you listen to the voice that is going to be better for you long term, the quieter the other voice gets. The other voice used to be so loud. It used to be just eat the piece of cake, just like skip out on sleep, just forget the work, just give up, it's fine, you're okay. Ever since I stopped listening to that voice, it's gotten so much quieter and it's easier to not listen to. Don't let temporary emotions dictate long-term plans, because when you have these emotions day to day that are going to be a bit spontaneous, allow that and allow that spontaneity, but also realize that you have a bigger plan, you have a bigger purpose, and your intention is higher than any day-to-day change that could be happening. Making time for everything is not always going to look perfect, but the thing is that if you continue to choose to show up and you continue to be intentional and choose that voice that you know is going to be good for you, then you are inevitably going to move towards your dream life. And it is going to show up around you in so many ways that you're not even like capable of like believing. It's going to be so incredible. Thank you so much for watching. Always remember, you are always qualified for your dream life. So do not let anything stop you.